Oh, and I love when everything is not lined up the way it's supposed to be. Here we go.
Right.
Love lovely live shows. Here we go. And welcome to another exciting episode of Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael. And for those of you who are joining us, thank you for your patience. It was one of those unfortunate seas of life happens. So we are starting delayed, but I promise we will have a full episode for you. Mary is very generous with her time. So hopefully, we'll still get to cover everything, and I'm excited for the new information that's coming. And for those of you who are new to the show this season, this is Mary's second appearance. So we are very excited and blessed to have her back on the show. So without further ado, I am going to stop talking so Mary can start with her stuff, and I am going to turn it over to Mary.
Hi. Well, I don't know how to start it. Hi. Thanks for having me again.
You're welcome. Well, so what's been new in your world since we were you were on the show last year?
Um, gosh, a lot. So I got the master exit document done, and the military got a copy, and then I had to send copies, make addendums, and send that to certain places in the government. And these are all you can look them all up. One of them was the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, because that's where they keep your straw man, your other person, your conspiracy theory, twin trust account. And then for those that don't know what the straw man is, please Google it. It's everywhere now. Um, and the federal treasury is the second place, but you have to send it to the custodian of the alien property. So that's always interesting. I'm curious to see why that title is what it is. So, but I haven't quite learned that yet. And then to the chief and commander over the military, again, is probably it's. I sent it to Trump, so they all received it, and I have to wait 30, I think 30 to 60 days to hear anything back. So I'm just kind of in a waiting period right now. I got my crest done. I got access to the Adam and Eve bloodline because I'll have to at one point go to Switzerland to do a blood test. Um, and if my DNA matches the treasury that is supposed to be in my inheritance, then I will receive a certificate from them to go to the Hall of Titles. And when you go to the Hall of Titles, from my understanding, these are very majestic people, very loyal to Creator, and not anybody can just access the treasuries, the ancient treasuries of Hanova, which are God's treasuries to his children, which we haven't had access to for a very long time because of the invader races and the occupation race. So that is what I've been doing since we talked
Wow.
last. Summarizing it all.
No, that was summarized really well. And so I'm curious, you say you finalized your crest. Can you share what the crest looks like and what it means?
Not yet. I just drew it today. It's been in my head. I am an artist, but there was I had my heart broken when I was young and I couldn't draw anymore. It was weird. So drawing comes when opportunity comes, I guess. I don't know, people deal with trauma differently. When I was growing up, art was my escape from life. And uh, I deeply fell in love with somebody and we split up and I actually had a heart attack. So I was severely traumatized because of it and I couldn't draw. So I today was a day and I was in class with my kids because I homeschool and it just went down and I put in what I believed my past crest would have looked like, the ones that they have hidden. It does have a heart in it. I'm not saying I'm the queen of hearts by any means, but I feel like my crest had hearts. And when I was in grade school, I did the play Alice in Wonderland, and I was the Queen of Hearts. So not like off with your head kind of thing. I was great at it. Don't get me wrong. I Nobody after me could ever perform it like I did. Um, but
Looking like a
and
true actor.
no, that didn't come from me. That came from the teacher who actually did it.
Oh,
Everybody after me, he said was terrible. So, yeah, no, I guess I can perform, but I was little. We were all in grade school. So, um, I I'm trying to think of the compass is on it because I'm all about the compass and again, I'm here to fight God's war, so I want to save the planet just like everybody else does. And so that to me the compass represents the world, all four corners. And so the compass is on it. The crescent moon, yeah, and the crescent moon is the crown. I had it shaped in the crown with the lotus flower because I'm from Lotus, the town I live in. And yeah, there's just a lot of interesting stuff. So I can't wait to get it, finalized and digitalized, and then when I have it copywritten and trademarked, I'll post it out. But yeah, I definitely don't want people stealing it.
no, I don't blame you. And
So
family crests are actually really more important than people realize. Everyone thinks,
yeah,
oh, it's just an image painted on a shield from the old days. I was
right.
like, no, there's actually is a lot of deep meaning in family history into the crest.
There is, and honestly, everybody has to look at why the elites have crests, but we don't. But we used to. Our family history used to. And then when I found out what happened with that, when the wars were going on in Europe, Africa, everywhere around the world, America, after their reset of Tartaria, they flattened it out, did the mud flood thing, and the few villages that survived that whole thing, obviously, were the Indian Native Americans here. They were trying to rebuild from that whole devastation. But the New World opportunity is where we lost our crest because there were laws put in I think it was the 1700s, where I could be wrong on the dates. I have to go back and look. But you had to give up your entitlement in order to start fresh out here. So how they did it, and again, as I'm going through the ascension into the kingdom of heaven on earth, you start to remember everything, and it's kind of a cool journey.
Oh, you have someone
Uh,
behind you.
we do, my son. Here, sorry.
Oh
We're
no,
at the park. So as you go through it, you start to remember what happened because through your past lives and stuff. But you have to accept wanting to be in the kingdom of God. So right now, we're all in the kingdom of Lucifer. So that is a real thing, and you don't realize how real it is until you start doing this, this journey, and it's like, whoa. It's wow, talk about hypnosis on steroids, and that's what the MK Ultra was about. So, um,
it's like you're reading my mind because I was just thinking, is this connected
yeah,
to your MK Delta past?
right. Yeah, well, Ultra is just an umbrella for all the other programs within it, and it's still a part of Artichoke. Everybody thinks, oh, when they closed Artichoke, they didn't close it. They just renamed it. They still have Artichoke. It's still active, doing well, and hidden and hiding other things. So
Don't
they
you
don't
just
actually
love
close
our
things. They just move it
yeah
and rename it. Yeah.
yeah? I love how our military. Well, I say military, but it's more of the deep state cabal or whatever you want to call it faction. Just simply rename something and says, "See, we closed it," and then we all go, "Great, it's closed." Nobody thinks, "Hey, this thing that you're doing over here seems exactly like this,"
Right. Exactly.
but
On
you say you
steroids.
closed it.
Yeah. Totally. So yeah, everybody that came over here for the New World Opportunity exchanged their titles for opportunities, which
Oh, there we go. Oh, she's muted herself. Let's see. Can I unmute her? No. Oh, they took the mic off. So now her mic. So hopefully we'll get her back, everyone. Don't panic. We'll get this figured out. Um, it's the joys of doing live shows. I'm sure she'll be right back, and we can continue delving into the unknown and piecing together the information that she has to share with us. And I will say, as for our family, my family, I have looked up my father's crest, but I have not looked up my mother's side's crest. So that is something I need to make a note of to do. And so let's see. Yep, she's messaging me that the system kicked her out where she's at on her phone. So hopefully we'll get her back in here shortly. And for those that remember the episode she was on prior, we had the same issues. So hopefully this will be a one-time kickoff and they'll leave us alone so we can have our show. And let's see, is she back? She's back. Or can she not hear me now? Oh, still having a little bit of. Yes, Crossroads meets the Ocean Rose. I agree. We were talking about something so
can you hear
controversial.
me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay. So sorry about that.
No, that's all right. We were commenting that yeah, that it's so controversial what we're talking about. They cut your mic and cut your signal.
They're like, no, stop. Don't let people know what they did. Hold on, real quick. Okay, sorry about that.
No, you're totally
So
fine.
where was I? Oh, so yeah, so when they entered the country, you gave up your entitlement for the new opportunity in America, going through the stages. Let's fast forward up to 1933, where the banks came in. So this is how you were born because you're entitled to gold, silver, gems, and jewels. So no, again, nobody should have been suffering, and we knew this. I'm frozen.
Oh, your voice is still
That's
coming
funny.
through, but yes, your
Hold on.
image is freezing up a little bit.
Is it? Okay. All right.
Image is
How
good,
about
and
that?
hopefully the lag will get
That's
in.
better. So, okay. Right. So this is kind of how America stole our entitlements, our wealth. So anybody who's done their ancestry, because I did mine like 15 years ago, and I was like, man, we should have just stayed in Europe. It seems like the minute we all got to America, we all became poor and broke and slaves. So I mean, how did that happen? I mean, we were kings, queens, princesses, dukes, duchesses, and it's like, wow. And so I had to look it up. I wanted to see in history what happened, and sure enough, the that's what happened. We gave up our entitlements for a new opportunity, and how they hid it. So you can still have your titles, but this is how they do it in the elite like secret societies. They let you have your entitlements, but over here you can only be a lord or a lady or a stir, like a stir knight. So that's in the secret society. So they let you do your shield. You go through the whole thing, and so I had some people, some family members over here who had crests, and I'm like, why do they have crests but nobody else has crests? So then I found out there. You look at some of their tombstones, and they'll have like the Masonic logo. They'll have like the Templar star on their tombstones, and it's like, oh, that's how they allowed you to get your crest back. But when you do that with the secret societies, you actually give all your inheritance to that particular secret society in order to get your titles back, but with consequences.
I don't
So,
know. To me, I'm like, is it worth it? I'd rather take the inheritance than the title. I think.
right. Well, they're keeping it from you either way. So,
Right.
the real inheritance is the treasuries. Um, but again, they can't take it from you. You have to give it willingly because that's the whole Lucifer kingdom thing. So right now, everybody should have like trillions of dollars in gold and gems, and like you should be making your own jewelry. You have your own estates with, loyal subjects and stuff. Not everybody can be a high level royal. Some people are subjects, but we're all mixed in. The invader races are mixed in, the occupations people are mixed in. Nobody actually knows who they are. It's crazy. So when I went on this journey with the master exit documents, I figured it out, and it like literally it comes to you. You're like, oh, I totally see it now, and then getting the bloodline of Adam and Eve. That was, I don't know if that was more devastating or, but we asked for the truth, right? So
Right.
it hits you hard. It really hits you hard to know the truth about the Bible. The Bible is real, and it is a confession. It is a timeline. So, like I've said before, there's two truths in there, and there's their truth and there's our truth, right? Or the truth of what happened. But I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings because it's a deep conversation with that one. But yeah, there's not lies in there, but there's a lot of deceptions, a lot of shenanigans. So Kind of like what you and I were talking about earlier with Adam giving a rib to Eve, and maybe she was Lilith earlier. That was fascinating thought. I thought about it after we got off the phone. So, but I do believe that Lilith was an Atlantean princess, so who was married to Adam before they were ascended. So,
Right. And the other thing that we were talking about too, that talking about like hidden information that's in plain sight, is the story says that Adam and Eve's children, which would be Cain and Abel, married women from tribes, but they tell us Adam and Eve are the only humans, and then their sons would be the. So there should, theory, be four
right,
people. Where did these women of these tribes come from? And everybody in religion goes, yeah, they got married. Yes, it's so nice. It's like, wait, where did they come from? Nobody asked that question.
right. They just they were spit out in eggs or something. You know, the long term question: the chicken or the egg came first? Which one?
And it's
So, and yeah,
interesting
and then
too that they use the term tribe, because that would mean there's a cluster of people, and another word for tribe is clan, or you could even say
right.
like star race. So it's like really opens up the question, what was these tribes?
So, looking at the timeline with the sons and daughters of Adam and Eve, the tribe was the male and the house was the feminine. So the kingdoms were actually named after the women. So the Canaanite, for example, the Canaanite kingdom was actually a daughter of Adam and Eve. So it was named after her, and then the house of, or the tribe of, was the male. So whoever the husband was, it would be the kingdom of the female, which would have been the Canaanite, because there's somebody that had their first and middle names, because they were all oh gosh, what was the last name? They all had the same last name. So the middle name was subject to the kingdom name. So it would have been the Canaanite, the Enoch, all and that in there. So that was Enoch is a race, but then the started with the feminine. Bible, when it talks about the two Jesuses, without talking about the two Jesuses, it says the three kings went to um, Judai, or Jesus of So the real name is Jaudi is her spelling. That's Jesus 12's mother. And so they say the three kings went to Jesus of Judai. They were talking about the mom. And then when they say the three wise men went to see Jesus of Mary, that's a different mom, child. So you start to put the puzzle together when you're looking at it, and it's mind blowing. So creator actually had a lot of children, and he only wakes them up as they go. So my story is there was 10 of us. So there's 10 people with the ability to stop the world order. Three of them were killed before me, and then I was woken up to do this job. If I fail, there's six more just like me that can do it. You know what I mean? So it's whoever wakes up and hits the finish line, I guess. So that again, interesting. So how many children are put down here that can do what we need to do to help, put the world back into the kingdom of heaven on earth, and out of the kingdom of Lucifer.
So it's interesting how you say there's 10, because one of the things that I've noticed that mainstream religion likes to talk a lot about is the 12 tribes. And you see a lot of references and a lot of books
Right.
of 12 tribes and then there's supposedly a 13th tribe member. And our calendar was originally 13 months, got shortened to 12. We were discussing that earlier too. And
Yeah, there's actually 14 tribes, but Cain's kingdoms literally took out two of them with no survivors. So that's how it became the 12 tribes. But they had 50 children. So just so you know, there's more tribes. It's not just 12.
it's like,
And I have all the
yeah,
names, the dates they were born, and who they married, and
wow. So Joanne
yeah. So
Stewart
like I
is
said,
saying,
it's a journey.
yeah, she's asking, didn't Cain go off and make his own clan? That's what they
Yes,
tell us. But they also
he.
said he wore a mark, and so he was like immortalized.
Well, he's. I don't know about the immortalization, but he knows how to live longer for sure. He could still be alive today. It is a curse. Um, I know the fallen angels are still here. 200 of them are the ones that actually run the world. Um, let's see. Cain killed Abel over the wife situation because he wanted to marry his twin sister, but Abel at 79 years old married his twin sister because God said swap the sisters, but don't let the deed. That's how it was supposed to be. And then Cain had two children, not Cain, I'm sorry. Abel had two children with his wife, which was Cain's twin sister, and then he was murdered by Cain. And I don't know how many children Cain had with Abel's twin sister.
So they muted there. Okay, they're muting your mic again, but it looks like it's back. So I'm thinking they don't want us, like she says, to know this information, and so that's why it's important that we get it out there, is to help bring awareness to what is hidden from us. So hopefully, looks like she's back.
Okay,
Let's see.
can you hear me? Okay.
I can't.
Sorry, I'm trying to get rid of the shadow on my face. I'm right in the sun. Sorry. Okay, that might work. There we go.
So, do you think, is there really a mark of Cain,
Matt.
or do you feel like that was something religion made up to control us and instill fear into people?
It could be. I mean, we more than likely to instill fear. It's not. It's the same thing we're going through now. Um, hold on, I gotta grab my keys. The sun is like right on me. um, just kind of think about what we're going through now, and then um, I guess it's not much different back then. Only they lived 1,000 to 10,000 years of life, depending on what your DNA sequence was meant to have. So that's why some people live 100,000 years, others 1,000. It just depended on what your purpose was here on Earth. The royals, I'm finding out, are 10,000 years, like the high royals, because they're supposed to do some kind of like 25,000 year cycle. So you're only supposed to have like 2 or 3 kings and queens during a 25,000 year period. Like I said, when you start getting into the master exit, you can access this stuff. And I don't even know why they call it forbidden knowledge, but it's eye opening. You get
Right. And
excited and then you cry and then you get excited again and then you're mad. A lot of
right.
emotions.
Right. And the one thing I still think about that too, with that we were talking about earlier, when we were talking, was how time goes from like 200,000 BC to zero, and then we're in zero to 2023, 2024. There is how time goes backwards and forward from a point. It
That's
always is going
the
up.
Yeah,
And
that's the
it's
era
like,
of the King of Kings. So that's the King of Kings era. So there's a timeline of eras. Um okay, so the era of King Solomon was before Jesus Christ. So he was appointed, Solomon bloodline was appointed by God to be the King of Kings at the time. So they don't allow one family to rule over the world forever. It has to, the changing of the guard has to change over. So when we are listening to all these different, things where everyone's like, oh, the changing of the guard, and then there's the changing of the royals, and they don't lose their titles, they just lose their positions over the planet. Does that make sense? So it's a changing over of the guardians and the priests, the holy priests. So that's what we are. This God is giving us the opportunity to reestablish our entitlements because we're still in the Christ era, and it was stolen by the King Solomon bloodline. They're illegitimate, and they're the ones that have been ruling this whole thing this whole time, and they weren't supposed to. It's like they couldn't give up the position of running the world.
right, they got power hungry.
Right. So, and that's why we all fell into sin and the age. And yeah, we're all sinners. We are born into sin because if let's say we lived 1,000 years, like I explained to you earlier, we don't actually hit puberty until we're 60 or 70 years old. So we're all children. In our cells are anywhere between 7 to 16 years old. So we're minors. That's why they say they're trafficking God's children, because they are. Because we're not supposed to be as old as we are physically.
Right. And I'm curious, as we're talking about the changing of the guard, so to speak, is that similar to, or am I like creating a pattern that's not really there by saying in astrology, like age of Aquarius, age of Pisces? Are these similar to the ages of Solomon and those bloodlines, and that's why we have these long periods and this specific star sign is because that's what that family is supposed to be ruling under?
It could be. I'm not really sure about astrology. I never paid much attention to it. I should. I
Don't
know
feel
we're
bad.
actually still in we're not in Aquarius. I know a lot of people want to believe that, but we're actually in the energy of Jupiter and Cancer. So Aquarius hasn't quite hit yet. But
Yeah,
because we're the manifestors, we're the actual AI, the angelic intelligence, they have to make it manifest so they could push their agenda faster using that frequency, because Cancer is the home energy. I don't know the energy. Jupiter's aggressive. So I guess the Jupiter and Cancer comes in to protect the home, right? Because that's what crabs do, is they're protectors. So
right,
Jupiter, being the volcanic, gassy, whatever it is the more dominant position to try to protect the home. So the home would be Earth, and then Aquarius. We're not in. I don't believe. From my understanding, with the forbidden esoteric knowledge, we are not in Aquarius yet. I did post on my Facebook page Adona of Soul, the specific clock. I can't remember the title of it right now. It's in one of the books that I have, and I ran across it to try to show people what kind of time that they use. So I don't know if anybody tried to geek out on that or not.
And do you think during the time of I know Julius Caesar took us into the Julian calendar, which had the 13 months and all the months named for the Romans. But then we switched to the Gregorian calendar, which I believe is the one we're using now. Do you think that they're constantly changing our calendar so that we don't know what age we're in, so we don't utilize the power of the age?
I believe so. But there's a lot of calendars. There's even an angelic calendar. Um, there's a lot of calendars. So I'd have to go into the forbidden knowledge and see how many different calendars that they use.
And I'm also curious why, like with time, I, I know everybody says time is a natural creation that we use to tell day from night, but I sit there and I look at it from the perspective of if time is natural, why do we have daylight savings and why does time change in the UK differently than the US? Same in other countries, and some places don't do, the time changes. And it's like, it's become this convoluted, confusing measurement. And
Yeah.
I'm like, was that done on purpose to keep
To
us like separate?
keep us in chaos. Chaos. So a lot of their motto is chaos out of order, order out of chaos. So how do you create chaos with theater? Theater is timely, just like when you're in a symphony, everything is about time. That's where time came from. Was you know how when people are musicians and they have the clicking clock that goes tick 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 that sets your beat?
The metric.
That's that's a rhythmic like time. That's the time you're scaling whatever your song is on. Same thing with theater. So theater has you got to come out at the right time. So we're living in a theater. So we are theatrically performing. Everybody is, whether you know you're doing it or not. Cops theatrically perform. When we call them, here comes the performance. Right on time.
Depending on where you live.
Right. Well, it's a good time, and we
Yeah.
always, we got stuff we got to do, but yeah, so everything is there's only time down here. And when the more knowledge you have and you're not afraid to look into, but again, everybody has a specific time they're going to wake up. God can't wake everybody up all at the same time because the frequencies would it would crash. It would be a bad idea. So from my understanding, the high kings and queens are going to be waking up first so they can restore the kingdoms that have been taken over by the Luciferians and the invader races and the occupation. And then when they're restored, then they have to fix their kingdom realms, whatever that looks like. And there's 275 countries that, 75 of them you don't even know exist. Like there's lots of countries that nobody knows about. Again, I've posted that on my Facebook too to show pictures of different maps to show people where they're at, what the names are. So sorry, there's mosquitoes out here.
No, you're fine. And I'm curious your thoughts of we are talking. You mentioned Tartaria, and Tartaria is becoming more prolific in the esoteric realms, to where more people are starting to share architecture. Giants were there that they had free energy and they knew how to utilize the energy of the earth to move vehicles and stuff. Is that gonna resurgence and Tartaria is gonna return, or did that civilization really get destroyed to the point to where there is no
It
more?
it was one of the resets. So what it's a past reset. It's not our current reset. Oh my gosh, they're in my face now. We're gonna be a reset. Uh, if we don't stop it, we're not supposed to be a reset, but it is up to humanity what they want to do. It's our choice because of free will, and there's God learns like we learn. So even though they're all knowing and all everything else, they're still young gods and creators and mega gods and stuff like that. With each reset, God learns just like they learn because the fallen angels know heaven, they know creator, so they know how to get around it, all the loopholes, right? So when he brings out the heirs to bring us out of the bad kingdoms, the bad guys try to figure out how to keep us in it. So it's literally it is a chess game. Oh, it's different kinds of games. Um so it's kind of hard to describe, I guess. I can think about it all day long because I'm actually part of the chess pieces now. And there's other people that are doing the Book of Life as well who are chess pieces. I'm on a call. Don't. Yeah, get it. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
They're like, I guess I'm gonna get bug spray for everybody. um, but it's at different layers. The games are at different layers. It depends on where you're at uh, in the sequence. So we are in pretty much the arena of the current gods over the world, which are the Illuminati, the fallen angels, the invader races. And the occupation race was actually one that we invited here. I don't know how many years ago. It could have been a couple million years ago. It could have been 50,000. I'm not sure the timeline when they got here, but we invited them here to help us with the invader races. And then they actually occupied the planet because of that. So, for example, like when we go to war with other countries and we don't end up leaving, that was them.
Right.
They stayed because they were like, "Oh, you can't take care of yourselves. So we have to help you. We have to be the people over you because you got stuck with all these invader races and that just wasn't the case." It's, you know. So yeah, they stuck around and they're actually the government that rules over everybody and they're the occupation is what they call themselves. I don't know what the actual race is because the invader races are like the Anunnaki and the Palladians and stuff like that. So it'll be fun to figure it out as we
Right.
go.
And
The
I'm
fallen angels are
curious,
the biggest problem though.
right? I'm curious your thoughts on with everything that you know is I've heard talks of like we had the Parthenon in Tennessee near Nashville, or it might actually be in Nashville, totally reconstructed to scale. And that was because that was supposed to be like the new Jerusalem. Then I've heard talks of, yes, and the capital of the Cabal's America is in Colorado. Did it shift from Tennessee, or are these just two different factions that were like trying to claim the nation territory?
There, well, just America, or are we talking on a worldly scale?
Well, I don't know what their game plan was. I just know
Well,
like
it's still there. Their game plan's still there until the heirs come forward. So if you guys don't know that you're heirs, how can you come forward and claim it if you don't? So in 2012, Now, and here's something to think about. And again, we're going to get into the Bible, and I'm sorry if I offend anybody, but again, when you go on the journey, you find out there was more than one Jesus, and those are God's children. I don't put limits on creation or creator. So if they want 50 people down here to try to save the world, they're going to put 50 people down here. But Jesus from Mary was not really crucified. Okay, we're seeing this today in our own world, how people are supposed to be dead, and how many times did they go to Gitmo? You know,
Right.
you know what I mean? They're not really dead. Those are performances. So Jesus 12 didn't, or Jesus 9 didn't really die. Somebody else did die in his place. It was an apostle who took his place. That was the sacrifice. So
It'd be
as,
interesting to go back and see which apostle disappeared. Like,
right,
no longer got messaged and be like, there's who was on the.
right. That's who it was. He didn't get arrested. He's not mentioned anymore. Yeah, I'm not sure which one it is. But the real Jesus, from my understanding, lived to be his name. He changed his name to Master Melchizedek. So he was the red bloodline, and then you had the blue bloodline, which was Joshua, and he was the other Melchizedek bloodline. So the blue pill, the red pill, the red coats, the blue coats, the red, white, and blue on our flags all over the world. Those are the war between the two houses. That doesn't even include the fallen angels and the invader races. So they use the bloodlines in order to keep us confused. So, to my knowledge, Joshua 12 ascended out during the war back then. That war used to be in the Bible. They took it out now. So if anybody has their grandparents' Bible, it's in there. I used to read it a lot. I don't know why I was drawn to it, but it to me it made sense because I had to read it. Um, Jesus 9 made a deal with Peter, who ended up being Saint Peter of the Vatican, and now we know what the Vatican is.
Yeah.
So now you got to see who's actually the deceivers here. And so Peter was a deceiver. John was a deceiver because John ended up being the accountant, or whatever you call the person that did the accounting for the royal house of Matthew, who Matthew in the Bible was actually a king. His name was King Matthew Syro of the Benjamite tribe, House of Seth, because that's my bloodline. And I had to look at it because those are the ones that I have to refer to when I go to the Hall of Titles. So I was like, whoa, he was a king? What? So again, you're going to see some stuff and you're just like, I thought he was a prophet. They said these guys were poor, but no, Jesus was a king and he was the King of Kings. Jesus 9 was the King of Kings. He did not grow up poor. Joseph and Mary were royals. They had titles, kingship titles,
Yeah.
queen titles. It's amazing what
Yeah.
they're not
And
telling us.
it's interesting because, like you say, they were rich, but we're told they're poor. And
Right.
they're traveling all over the known world. And we know in today's terms, you can't just pick up and just decide, yeah, I'm going to go walk over to, say, California today and, no big deal. Or I'm going to walk over to Mexico. No one's going to care.
Right.
No, it costs money to get where you're going
Exactly.
and where you're staying. And so it's like, yeah, these people who were
Oh,
traveling
and
all
yeah, they traveled
over,
all over the world. Oh,
they're
the
like,
church covered it for me. Okay, who covers the church's bill?
yeah,
The poor people? Come on. Yeah, it's a lot of common sense, but it you don't know until you know. You don't know until you get into it. I didn't know until I saw this. I knew there was, some deception, but not to the scale of what I'm seeing now. It's
yeah.
like, wow.
And I'm
Um,
curious because one thing that got me, well, okay, it was like three things that got me kicked out of Bible study class. Yes, I've actually been kicked out of Bible study. Is that I said the first one was under Hebrew law to call Jesus rabbi, he had to be married. There was no honorary titles, and they all were like, well, he wasn't married, but he was a rabbi. I was like, fine. I'll, okay, whatever, moving on. And then I
Right.
was like, his feet being anointed by Mary Magdalene. I was like, under Hebrew law, only the wife could do that. So there's your wife. And they're like, no,
Right.
she just did him a favor. I'm like, I don't think so, people. Where are you getting this? Like, honoring
Right. You weren't
title
allowed to touch.
favoritism.
Yeah, men weren't allowed to touch royal women. So, and even back in the day, when they were courting, if somebody was courting somebody and they had a courting contract, they referred to the and then I heard this with a guy who did research for the Templars, and I can send you the videos, maybe you can post them, but he said that the demons that were referred to with Mary was they pulled the 7 demons out, or whatever, 7 to 9 demons. Those are the priests that follow her around while she's being courted to make sure she doesn't do anything impure before marriage. So when you're being courted, you have eyes on you, especially when you're a royal. They will not let you get anywhere near anybody. No other man can touch, no other man can look at you. I mean, they're awful. So that's why they call them demons, because they act like demons watching you constantly, and they won't leave you alone until after the conception.
Yeah.
Or not the conception, the night of the wedding. What do you call? I don't know what you call that.
Honeymoon.
Yeah, well, back then they had to make sure that they connected.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, what?
The awkward night, as I like to call it, where the family sits and watches to make sure.
Right. Well, it's actually the priests that watch, which is even grosser, but
Yeah.
and then for the men, it was her priestesses that would follow the man to make sure he didn't become impure during the courtship. So then there was another term for I think that's where the term witches came in, because they were cackling, don't do this, don't do that, don't look at that girl.
Hagging. They were nagging,
The
which
nagging witches.
became the hagging.
Right. So it's just
Yeah.
interesting to see the type of culture that was back then. And then again, and then after that, the honeymoon night, the sealment of it, then they would leave. They didn't have to watch
Conception.
them anymore.
Yeah. I
Well,
think it's.
conception was the child. Yeah, I don't know why
Oh,
I can't think of the name.
because it starts with the C, and it's so.
Right.
There's so many terms around it that it's like you just want to go to the one. But yeah, and
Right.
the third one though that I brought up that really like upset everybody was we. I never went through the dogma of religion, but I heard them say Jesus died on the cross to absolve sin. And I said, if something's been absolved, we cannot do it anymore. So we are
Right.
not sinners anymore. And they said, yes, you are. I'm like, then you say Jesus died on the cross for nothing.
Well, we're
It was like,
sinners because
oh,
we're children. We're physically children, but we're not in the physical form of a child. So I'm 44, right? So my DNA would actually, or my cells, I would say are about 8 years old, 8 or 9 years old. So I already have children. I did get married, but we're sinning because we're children. Like, we're acting as our own pedophiles, and I don't want to say it that way, but we're living in sin because we're acting as adults, but our cells are still children. So that's why they say God's children are being trafficked. It's everybody. We're all enslaved. We're all in this slave system around the world, and we're not living our full life of the 1,000 years or 10,000 years. So we're still children. So that's what the sin is. So yes, we are all sinning because they did mess with the DNA so that we age quicker, but our cells are still children.
yeah. So do
That's
you
why
feel
we're not
that?
punishable by death because of the sin.
Yeah. So I'm curious your thoughts of Cathar, France. I'm sure you're familiar with that area. It's where the Knights Templar kind of hung out and
Yeah,
kind of
captured Mary
made their
Magdalene.
territory.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you say captured Mary Magdalene. I heard she took a boat over there with Jesus and They
Jesus.
there.
So that phrase, that Matthew, I want to say 11:18, but I don't think that's the right one. Matthew said Jesus handed over or gave the keys to the kingdom of heaven on earth to Peter. So keys are figuratively speaking. There was no physical key
Right.
to the heavens. It's a DNA. So who did Jesus hand over to Peter? And then why was her name Magdalene? Because her real name was Mary of Bethany. How did she become Magdalene? The tower. She was locked in a tower for 480 years. She became the whore and the prostitute because the Templars and the Vatican and the Illuminati raped her for hundreds of years to get their own bloodline from her so that they could control the kings to the kingdom of heaven on earth through the DNA. That was upsetting for me to see. That was very
Yeah,
upsetting.
I can imagine it. It's funny when
And
you say the keys to the kingdom. My
it
first thought every time I heard that was like music or a sound frequency, a
it's
key.
a DNA. We're the keys. I'm a
Yeah,
key, but what key was I? I just found out I'm the Trinity keys. So what is the Trinity keys? And I don't really want to go into what the Trinity keys are because again, there's a lot of people that aren't ready to hear that stuff. So what happens when I, do claim these titles? One of them is the Mary Magdalene Kingdom of Heaven on Earth. So I am a key holder through the DNA sequence frequency, what they call it. That's why your DNA is so important. That's why they need to know who you are. They want you to get your DNA in there, which we all have. Because every time you go to the doctor and they swab anything on your body, they have your DNA and they send it to the lab. So now it's registered. So they know who you are on a digital format instead of on paper now. So they're the ones they're trying to take out, I would imagine, are the actual heirs to the planet. So, and they
you
want
know,
to bring us down to just a few.
yeah, and it's interesting you put it that way because I always remembered in mainstream religion in the time of Revelation there was the story of the last Zion, and nobody really
Right.
knows this story. And I'm like, how do you not know this story? It's the last. It's supposed to be the child who carries the bloodline of Mary and Jesus. The last of the lineage comes, awakens, and and it changes, and starts the revelation, or not revelation, yeah, the revelation period, Armageddon, so to speak. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but if Jesus, as religion says, has no kids, how do you have a last Zion? There has to
Right.
the
Has to
blood
be an error. Yeah.
continues. So it's like you guys put all these prophecies and all these things into place, but then you corrupted the story to where now nothing makes sense because
Right. Everything is all weird now. Um, oh, what there was a point I was getting to earlier with Jesus becoming Master uh, Melchizedek. I think it was Master Alchemy Melchizedek, something like that. But anyways, he lived to be 100 or 1,036 or 38 years old. So, and even with the Tartaria stuff, where they're saying that they took they added 1,000 years, right? So let's say they did add that 1,000 years, and we all know about um, the Mayan calendar. It's also a treaty. The treaty ended when the heir died. So how is it that the heirs, like myself, can come forward if Jesus was the last heir? So there you go. There's another step to it. So how many other heirs were there in between all this? Mary, Queen of Scots, was an heir. King, what's his name? Arthur was an heir, and all of them got locked in towers. I know that everybody thinks that King Arthur died from an injury in war or something, but he actually didn't, because Merlin was the deceiver, the magician. Merlin, I don't know who Merlin is. I loved Merlin growing up, and then I found out, everybody that they promote are the bad guys, right? And everybody that's the bad guy in the movies was actually the good guy defending their
So
world.
I actually just did a little insight video on the Knights of the Round Table being
Uh-huh.
potentially star beings, like hybrids, and
Not
connecting
until
to the zodiac.
after, yeah, not until after Arthur died. He did have an heir
Yeah,
with what's her name? She was the queen, but he was locked in
Guinevere.
a tower. Guinevere, yeah, she did have an heir, and that's when they created that war. He was injured, but not that injured. But from the story that I'm seeing now, with everything coming out to me, um, he was injured. Merlin and one of the other knights left with him. The knight was murdered by Merlin, but because he did have an injury, it did fester. Because he wasn't taken to the palace, he was taken to the tower. The tower was in the middle of a lake. I don't remember what it's called, but I think it's in that movie.
Avalon.
But yeah, so there was a tower. So he was locked in a tower. So Guinevere could actually run the kingdom. Um, and if they needed his seal or signature, they would go to the tower and get it. Same thing with Mary Magdalene. That's how they reset. They would allow these people like myself to ascend. We get to go down to Area 51, restore our DNA, and then they're going to try to capture us so they can lock us in towers. I mean, how many towers does Trump have right now? I'm just pointing something out. He's got 3. So Mary Magdalene had quite a few towers in Europe that she was moved to, and people forgot who she was, so that's why they called her Mary of the Tower. So all the heirs got locked in a tower so that they could keep the matrix going. They would just reset a new matrix, and that's what they're doing, is they're capturing the heirs after we get uh, our entitlement, and then we disappear. Nobody remembers who we were.
Yeah, and Magdalene's Tower and Rennes la Chateau. I just love saying that sometimes, Rennes la Chateau. But I have a feeling like there's more to that than meets the eye because
Mhm.
yes, it's on an intersection of ley lines. Yes, there's hidden stuff there, but I feel like you're pointing out, being the tower where she was at, that yes, there is a deeper yet that we have yet to discover purpose for that tower.
Right. Well, it's to lock up the heirs. And that God, like I said, God learns with each step. I have a fail safe, and I was part of the MKDELTA programming, so I can fight. I can't take on a whole army. I'm not like Superwoman or anything, but I can protect myself to an extent. So, and I have a fail safe that should work. But God didn't abandon everybody. They're letting us think that, these Luciferians and everything, but He's been trying. There's Because of free will, people have to come down here in a certain way. So there's certain frequencies, certain people born that are supposed to be able to try to free the people from Lucifer's kingdom. But if people keep saying, no, that's not accurate, that'll never happen. If you still say no, God will never do that, you're pretty much saying Lucifer wins, because why are you putting restrictions on the person that created life itself? you know?
Right.
So, but because of free will, there's laws even he can't trespass over. So it is up to the people. If the people want to say, yeah, I am an inheritor, I am the heir. It's in the Bible. Older versions of the Bible, it says God is the heir. Were the co-creators or the co-heirs, and we are the co-creators. But there are invader races here, and there's occupation races here, and then of course the fallen angels. And the only way you can find out who's who is if you do the Book of Life, which is the master exit document out of their system. So that's what they don't want. They don't want a large amount of people waking up. And I believe from what I'm seeing, that um, the Jesus era was so important because a lot of people actually woke up. A lot of people actually did the master exit. I think there was actually 100-something people, which would have restored the kingdoms. So then they started the war to try to stop them, and it worked. They were successfully able to stop the ascension and the freedom of the people even then. So I don't know
Right.
what this is going to look like, but I think we have a better chance at it.
And one of the things that I find interesting about religion too is, like you're saying, going to the grandparents' books, and before, we were all children of God, made in His
Right.
image. Then all of a suddenly, I
We're
believe,
not.
Council of Nicaea, it becomes Jesus is the Son of God, and we all need to worship Him to get into the kingdom of heaven. And it's like all of a sudden we went from everyone to one. And
Right. No, we're the higher DNA frequency to help everybody else. It's a chain reaction because we're the angelic intelligence. So that's what the real AI is. We manifest it. So if you manifest God has restrictions, you're going to manifest God having restrictions, but it's only going to apply to you because you're manifesting your world. But if you study electrical frequencies, then you can actually see how it works. If I reach out to you or you reach out to me because you feel like you have a pull in, because I'll talk to people on the phone, because to me, it's you've got to reach out to people. If we ignore them, then nobody's connecting. Power can't charge itself. It has to have what? A grounder, a connection. There has to be something there. If you want to get to the etherical energy, you have to, use electrical copper wiring, get it up there, and then, you can do a couple of other things. My grandfather had copper wiring, and he was a mason though, so he had that technology, and he had free energy in his shops. His power bill was like $35 every month because the shops were running on free energy. It was copper wiring, and I think he used a tractor alternator, and a switch.
wow.
Free energy.
And to think we've had that to where even, and this is the part that amazes me, is Tesla lights up a field of light bulbs with one light added to the circuit. They all light up, and there's no source except for the ground.
Right.
And all that information got suppressed because the powers that be didn't want to lose their income. And instead of being honest and saying, I don't want to lose our income, they in turn make it so that you're afraid of the technology by going,
Right.
gosh, this could kill you. And we're like, well, nobody wants to be killed. So it's like people will blindly surrender information that is their
Right.
right. I mean, look at the Patriot Act. We surrendered so many freedoms under the guise of being made safe, but they
Right.
never let them go. They never, it was supposed to be temporary and it became permanent.
Right. And we're all children. So
Yeah.
what happens when you have children? I have 3 children, and I have to watch them constantly. Because they don't know the dangers. So even though we're in an adult form, we still, the what are the words used? The lusting and everything else is because we have a child cells and a child mind. So we're still like little kids chasing after stuff that is not good for us, and children don't know better. So how are we supposed to know better? But again, once you're on that journey, you realize, holy cow, my cells are supposed to live for 1,000 to 10,000 years, and I'm literally only 13 to like 9, 10, 11 years old in an adult body. I think that movie Big describes it.
Yeah,
Like how I don't know if you've seen that, but he
I
does the
have.
magic wish, yeah. And he's like a child in an adult body. So they're telling us right there, you're a child in an adult body. So you have the child thinking, but not the actual adult thinking because our cells are not that old. Our the way our body is right now, it is, but our
Right.
cells are still very young.
And it's interesting too, being like talking about the childlike essence is if you look at a lot of the monarchs and the monarchies, when the time of succession came to pass, and like the queen
Hmm.
didn't want to relinquish control to the heir, what came about? Regencies, to where
Right.
she can where she gets to keep her power and rule in the name of until they deem he is, or until the heir is, quote, ready to rule. And so I was like, that was a load of crap because that was just a power play of, yeah, someone
Right.
didn't want to let go of their power. And so what do? They make a new law. Yeah, you need a regent.
Right. But everybody is an heir. It's just God's waking up the heirs that are supposed to restore the kingdoms, and then everybody else is supposed to wake up. But you're all heirs. You have trillions of dollars in the Honova treasuries that were given to us with each seeding, if you will. And the seeding is still birthed on the planet. So the Adam and Eve seeding was still given a treasury. Um, and this is what the occupation and everybody's been trying to steal. But because the fallen angels fell, the treasuries got locked up, and only the kings and queens were allowed to do it. So the whole Aladdin movie tells you only one can enter here. So it's
Right.
the one that's appointed by God. It's not, I mean, he's not going to come down here and say, I anoint you, because you woke up first. He woke you up. And the ones that were supposed to recognize that were the guardians and the priests, who are now the Illuminati and the Vatican. So obviously it's not going to go in our favor because they are the guardians and the priests right now, because the real ones are still down here where we're all been mind blanked and we forgot. But again, it's not just God trying to wake us up. It is the other angelics. It is other good people down here, because they're all the other races are also living in the same situation we are, and they're done. You know, it's been this way for millions of years because their planets and their worlds and their galaxies all got blown up, because of whatever that situation was. And when I was talking to one of the generals, um, because I don't know what other heirs have turned in the papers, and I told him, I was like, look, I don't. He was like, what do you want? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's all in my book. I want to restore the planet. What does that look like to you? And he said, you're like the fourth person who sent me a demand letter. And I was like, no disrespect, sir, but I didn't send you a demand letter. I sent you an offer. It's different. I'm not demanding anything. I was like, my thought is that there's invader races here and there's an occupation here, and you guys need to go home. What that looks like, I don't know. I'm sure we can find a solution to the problem, but we got to stop focusing on the problem so we can find the solution. I was like, you guys have been here for millions of years doing all this shenanigans on this world and trying to claim this world in the galaxy. And I was like, did you ever stop to think that maybe your galaxies and your planets and your quadrants have healed by now? I mean, you've been on this quest for over a billion years. I guarantee you there is planets that you can go back to. So he
Feel free
thought
to go home.
differently. Right. So there you go. I don't want war. If we I want to save as many people as possible. We need to figure
Right.
out who belongs to who, because no, you can't take the angelic humans off the planet. That was never in anybody's contract. That was never we're part of the angelic race that God put here. You're part of your race that God put over in that quadrant, blah 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 blah. So the book of life will sort that out, because they do have everybody's bloodline, everybody's family tree. I've seen it all the way back to God. It's, it's amazing when you start getting into it. what
Right.
happens. It's kind of scary in the beginning because you're like, oh, they're going to come after me. But once you accept yourself into God's kingdom, He can be in your heart all day long. You can go to church all day long. That's on you. I go to church still. I do it because I want to be around good people. I'm not trying to go to the satanic clubs and be like, hey, follow me to back to the kingdoms of heaven, right? I mean, I'm not trying to hang out with the bad guys,
Right.
but we have to be able to show God that we're serious to come home. So again, what does that look like? I don't know. I'm still doing it. I'm not going to stop doing it because I'll always go in first and then I won't leave until everybody else is out. That's a military standpoint. That was my job. First one in, last one out. Whether you were dead, the bodies have to go too.
Right. And you have the military background to stand with it and comprehend that. And one thing I was just thinking about, because you were talking like, you said your grandfather ran his business on free energy.
Well, this is not his business, his shops. He had
Well,
two
his
shops.
shop.
Yeah.
But, and we were talking about Tesla, and I heard, I think it was like there's 6 towers now, and one of them is in Texas, and it's just a standalone tower on some random property that's a Tesla tower. And I can't help wondering if, like you're saying, as the air arises and reclaims, are these towers being set up to aid the heirs and to awaken or help the aid the heirs in doing their stuff? Because why would there be these random Tesla towers being put up
Right.
different areas?
Right. Or they were already there and they're just letting them out.
Well,
I
they're
know
pretty
there was a lot of abandoned ones.
right. And the interesting thing is when I say Tesla Tower, I know everyone's going to go and look up Tesla Tower, and they're going to see the image of like Westinghouse, where it almost looks like an oil rig, and that's
Right.
what it looks like. It is. It almost looks like a water tower. It's a tube with a dome on or a mushroom. It doesn't look like what we were told was a Tesla tower, and I had to look it up, and I was shocked when I saw it on TV because I would drive past it and be like, "That is an odd looking building," and finding out it's a Tesla tower.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't mind them coming back, but anybody can make free energy. I
As
kind of
long
already
as
gave it away.
it's pressing us.
Well, no, I talked about it, so just go back and listen. I was hinting at it. You gotta kind of gotta figure out the rest, but it's not too difficult. It seems difficult, but I think when people start trying to do something, it comes back to you. The biggest challenge that we have is remembering.
Yes,
It's already in our DNA. We just need to remember. And how you remember is doing it.
and on a personal note of memory of everything is, I know you're forward with your secret space program, MKDELTA programming. You have memories of that. I have obtained a partial memory of my involvement in the space program, and I'm constantly like trying to figure out how or what I can do to unlock more, and it seems like it's always just random.
Kind of. Um, so what I found with the master exit document, and I don't know how many like patriot fighters you have in your group that are in a lot of these patriot groups out here that are trying to teach people how to get out of the system, which really they're not teaching you how to get out of the system. They're teaching you how to stay in it and become more harvestable was my personal experience, because I was in a lot of those groups too, and bad things happened. So, like Fed level bad things happened, and I was just going through the groups just like what they said. The master exit document's written in Old English, so I don't know how many people like to read like Shakespeare, the any kind of the old books. I have the old books. We were raised on them. So, understanding theater, there's the sequence and the frequencies that we have to do to, I would say, deprogram yourself is that way. Go back and start reading the actual Shakespearean writing and try to understand it, because it's deprogramming. So in the master exit document that I have is written in Old English, and as you go, you have to type it up, because I'm not giving out the templates anymore because it's just causing problems. Too many people want to grammarize it in today's language, and you can't do that. It's not going to do anything. They're just going to send it back or arrest you because you're calling out the treasury. So with each step, this was my spiritual journey. I am working with other people on it, just in case anything happens to me. There's other people that are going to try to fight to save the world. It was like I was spiritually sewing myself back together, with my soul and my spirit and my physical body. So the trinity of ourselves, our temples. I'm getting out of the book of the dead, going into the book of the life, and this is what that real ascension looks like. So when we were born and they gave us our death certificate and put us in the graveyard while we're still alive, that's where we're at. We're living in the graveyard. So that's because they can control the dead. So, and I learned this again on my own personal journey these last couple years since COVID. And sorry, my phone wasn't charging. And I was removed from my house. My children and I were, but there was one deputy sheriff there with a warrant. The other people that were there were coroner sheriffs. So after we had gotten removed from the house, I didn't fight them because they were big. They were feds. Believe it or not, coroner sheriffs are federalized, and they're mean. They are very mean. They had 3 guns on them, tasers, and everything else that possible could hurt me. And I didn't want my kids to see that, so I gave in. And we're sitting outside, and the coroner sheriff comes up and starts saying blah 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 blah. This is, you have 15 days to get your stuff, this, that, and the other. And I asked, he's all, you have any more questions? I was like, yeah, actually I do. I was like, so you're a sheriff's coroner, right? He said, yeah. I was like, don't coroners handle the dead? And he starts laughing. He's like, we do. And I was like, so are you pretty much chasing the living dead? And he laughed hard, and he was like, you can say that. I was like, in plain sight. Wow. So, and then I had to go in and look at the grave robber laws. And the grave robber laws actually do apply to the living dead. Your house is your crypt. And the only ones that can come in there to remove the dead are the coroners.
That's funny.
Oh my gosh. It's like, wow. Mind blown.
Yeah. So we're actually at an hour and 23 minutes. Do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
So Iron Bear 78 is asking, does Mary know who the tribes of 5 are?
I can give you all the tribes' names. I'd have to do it on another podcast, though. I come from the Benjamite tribe on Mary Magdalene's dad's side. So that's one tribe. I have them written down, but I don't have them here, unfortunately, because we're at the park, because I don't have very good internet at my house.
I find that shocking. With all that you have to share, that you don't have good internet.
I know. That's why they do it. So they're like, let's not make it easy for her.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like, my friend was pointing out earlier, like, we started talking about, like, the MK Ultra and everything, and all of a sudden your phone cuts out and you're muted, and it's like it didn't happen until we mentioned that, and it's like
Right.
yes, they can interfere with signal.
And I'm in a public park, so I'm using their Wi-Fi. So it's an unfortunate Game of Thrones. What can I say?
Yeah, and I can't help wondering too if sometimes all the resurgence of why like old movies are being remade and shown in a new light, and it's like, and I find myself going and saying the way they're doing it now makes it much more clear the hidden message to it, but a lot of people still look at it and go, well, they're just telling this again. I'm like, no, you're missing the imagery of it, the subliminal
Right.
message to it that you're supposed to be getting.
Mhm.
And it's interesting to me how some people will see that, some won't, and it's like I can't help wondering, like when you're saying, the heirs are out there and don't know it, could
Right.
that be a sign of who you are? Is your ability to see that which is
Yeah.
unseeable?
That's funny you say that because in the document it says I'm not a belligerent. I am not lost at sea, SEE/SEA, and or I'm coming back from space. So space is also in there. That was on the Treasury document. The C SEE/SEA was on the trust document. So I actually combined the two documents back together as one because part of the Illuminati's agenda was to not let anybody ascend out back into the kingdoms of God. So they separated the documents, and the Masons and the Jesuits took the trust document, which again is your straw man. So that's how they controlled your physical, and then the Templars took it does say it in there. I'm not a belligerent. I'm not a child. I am of age and majority, and I am no longer lost. I can see you with your eyes, and you're not lost at sea beyond God's kingdom. Because they, again, if you know the straw man, you'll know the trick is that you're lost at sea, which is your sight and the ocean. You can see where you're at now, and then lost in space. Lost in space could be a lot of things. We are on the surface space of Earth. There is an underground space, which is the underground cities, military bases, and then there's the space of the water, which is where the aquanoids live, right? So there's all these different types of space. When they say outer space, that implies between planets, between quadrants. We are in the alpha quadrant. So the reptinoids come from the delta quadrant, and I believe the phaenoids, they have their own galaxies, and I believe they might be in the echo quadrant. I'm not 100% sure. But again, it's all you once you start really waking up. And again, I was deprogrammed in the beginning, back in 2019, and then there was an operative that came out to try to kill me because I broke my kill switch and I survived it. So now I can't be controlled, um, unless they physically come and do it. So, but it just turns into a huge fight. So, um,
Well, what's
again,
interesting too is I spiritually, growing up, one lady when I was getting a reading from her said a lot of what you'll learn is when you start to see with eyes unseen. And I was like, why do they always give me these riddles? And it's like now it's like I look at it and I'm like going, oh
right.
my god, I'm
Yeah,
seeing
riddle me
everything
this.
with eyes unseen now.
Right. Yeah, and everything that everybody's doing in all these different groups, the quantum groups, David Straight with his stuff, and then just there's other groups out there too. Everything that everybody's doing, because again, I was in these and my friends were in the other ones, and everything's in the master exit document. It covers all that stuff that everybody's doing. But they're doing it in pieces, so you can't. We're hamsters running in a circle. They're not gonna let anybody out.
Right. So
because they've already made the oath. They only freed their straw man.
Right. So we're actually at an hour and 30 minutes, and I know you got kids running around, so I don't want to take any more of your family time. But I want to thank you for coming on, and
thank you.
Where can people find you if they have?
I have a web page. Yeah, my web page is adonaofsoul.us, or I have a Facebook page, Adona of Soul. That one is Adona of Soul at Gmail, because I had to have a Gmail account for Facebook for some reason. So you can look it up that way. I think the Facebook one, I accidentally put 2 D's and 1 N, so try both variations and you'll see it. It should be a public page. But that's another one. My Telegram just came up. Yeah, so they should be, the web page should be connected to the other one. I do not talk on Telegram, like send out messages. I just do like AI art, because they made it so people couldn't see my Telegram. Twitter. I can't talk on there, or nobody can see it. So I did my art, and now they're letting people see my Twitter account. So I can't talk. They won't let me talk on it.
That's
but
funny.
If you want to see some art, you can see some art. I do leave hints in art, just so you guys know.
Well, all the links that you gave me are in the description. I don't know if your Twitter was in there, but I do know your Facebook page is in there. And so before we cut out, and right, I believe the webpage is on there too. And so, what is a golden nugget from your life that you would want to leave with everyone watching this? One little golden nugget.
One golden nugget. Don't be afraid to remember.
That's a good one, actually. I like that.
Thanks.
So, I am going to say goodnight to everyone that's watching. If you're watching this in the East or Central time zones, it's nighttime. So, or depending on where you are in the world, make it a great day, great night. Step into the world with love. We need more love in the world, and don't be afraid to remember who you are, what you can do. And like Mary says, don't be afraid to remember. That is a beautiful thing, because that is something that people can't take away from us as much as they try to erase. I feel like there's always little nuggets of the memories still there. So, good night, everyone.
Right. Sorry, sleeping out on me again.